Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on what time you're watching this next episode from me, Avomance. And today I'm responding to a not small amount of people that would like a little bit of thought and idea and support on one of the primary building things when you're building any kind of house or temple or mansion or whatever it is you're building, castle. You need to be able to put a roof on it. And a lot of people have come to me and said, Avo, I would really like a little bit of idea and a little bit of a hand on roofs. And now roofs are really weird things. They're sort of eye of the beholder stuff. What one person thinks is a really gorgeous roof, another person thinks is a really pants roof. So it really comes down to personal preference. So disclaimer, I'm going to show you 8 different roof types that you can make, that you can adapt, that you can incorporate into your builds. Now, if you don't like these roof types, that's not my fault. I've not made them for you specifically. I've made them for general use, and you can adapt them however you want. And also, disclaimer number 2, I'm only going to be using 2 different types of blocks for these roofs, just to keep it standard so you can see the difference as a result of the shape and not as a result of the texture or the block itself. So I am just going to be using spruce wood and cobble. I've also got some oak there so as I can build a little bit of a frame, but that is just for the frameage. It is not for the roof itself. So just spruce and a cobble trim. Now you can adapt that as much as you want. You can put stone trim in there. You could use a different wood trim. You can use stone bricks. You can use all sorts. You could use different woods for your roof. You can use bricks. You can use all sorts of different things. So please, I'm not telling you all you can do is make a roof out of spruce, because that's just not true. We are going to be making roofs out of all sorts of things across the next months and years in Minecraft. So this is just to give you an idea of the shape, okay? And it's entirely up to you. Anyway, should we have a look at some of the roofs that we can make? Why don't we do that? Now, the first rule of roofs, and I don't care who you are and where you come from and whether or not you're a professional builder or whether you make sandwiches for a living, you have to have an O-hang on your roof, is my humble, which is never humble, let's face it, opinion. If you don't, it just looks boxy and square and horrible. So make sure you put an overhang on your roof no matter what shape, size or design you put on it. So this is a really simple roof made out of only slabs. So you're stepping up your slabs, 1 slab at a time, all the way to the top, and the top is in the middle right there, and then you step it all the way down. Now all the roofs I've made here are all using a 9x9 square of building. So these wooden legs are 9 blocks apart, and I've also put them 4 blocks up, just so as they all look the same. So every single one has got the same frame. But the way the roofs look are very different. So this is literally, we're just stepping up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The middle is 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing more complicated than that. Now that could be used for like a shed or an outhouse, or the side of a little outcrop of a building if you chose to, or maybe a front porch over a door. That works really well. I wouldn't say this is a shape that you could use very well for a lot of big builds, but it's definitely an option. So the next one is the classic, what is called 12 by 12. That's because if it goes across 12 feet, it also rises 12 feet. It gives you a 45-degree angle. And it's what most people think of when they think of a gable end, like an A-framed gable end. All it's using here is steps going forwards, backwards, all the way to the top, and then backwards, forwards, all the way to the bottom. It's a classic shape. It works really well. It works beautifully if you're putting in some dormer into a roof. For example, you can put one of these into the side of a roof to give a window on the side of a roof, and it works very well for that. Don't forget to put a slab at the top, otherwise it looks a little bit flat. Now the next one is an expansion on that 12 by 12, and it uses an extension method. So what we're using, rather than going step, we're doing step and then an upside down step, then a block, step, upside down step, then a block. And that gives you this kind of extended, longer feeling to your roof, and it gives you a lot more space inside. When you're using these roofs, you can start to build some decent kind of living space under your roof, because you can walk around. You've got plenty of room in there. It looks quite nice. It's probably the most commonly used roof, I should think, in a lot of YouTuber Minecraft builds, because it hasn't got the restriction of this 12 by 12 roof here, or 12-12 roof, and it's got a little bit of a greater level of interest than perhaps that has got. But it's also still relatively simple, with just a block between each step. So that's how that one can work. Then you can expand that a little bit more, and you can turn into what I would call a bit of a bell shape. And you do this quite simply by, rather than doing a block every time you go a step up, you do it every other time. So you do step, step, block, step, 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 block, step, 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 step. And you get this kind of bell shape. This works really beautifully if you're building things like barns, or like a Western theme in your world. It's a really classic shape for that sort of roof. And then you can adapt it even more by bringing this bell, but pinching it in just a little bit in the middle. And you achieve this by doing step, 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 block, step, step, block, step, step, block. So rather than doing it regularly, step, step, block, step, 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 block type thing, you then basically shove a block in twice after doing step, 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 step. So you're coming in on a 12 by 12 style or a 12-12 style, and then you start to do your blocks on top of your steps, like the second roof that we looked at over there. And that gives you this kind of pinched look. So it comes in, it narrows the roof a little bit, and then gives you that kind of extended frame. And that works really quite nicely if you're doing some medieval houses. Medieval builds often had this kind of classic pinched look, whereas it came in very, very sharply and went up quite quickly. Then we've got what I would call an extended bell-shaped roof. Now, I know if there are architects or roof builders, you're going to say, that's not what that's called, Avomance. It doesn't matter. That's how I want to describe it. So we've got the same pinch shape that we've got on this one, but then we go up one block, and then we go up 2 blocks. So you can see that. So it's the pinch coming in on a standard 12-12 style, coming up 1 block, then 2 more steps, coming up 2 blocks, then 2 more steps, then 1 block, and closing it off. And you get a slightly narrower bell shape. Now, I start to use these if I'm making, again, medieval houses work really well with these, but you can also start to use this sort of thing if you're doing like a spooky house, or a haunted house or something like that, because these more sharply pointing roofs become more common in that style of building. Then we've got this, which is sort of a cross between the two, which is a standard 12-12 roof coming up almost halfway and then shoving it up into a bit of a spike in the middle. This is quite good to use on the side of a house on a smaller section of a house. So not at the main roof, but at the side of the roof, where you're not necessarily going to be wanting to have too much access on the inside, but you want to give a bit of an accent to the house that is better than a standard A-frame 12-12 roof. So that is a really good use of that. And what you do is you come halfway up, then 1 block, then your 2 steps, then 2 blocks, and then close it off. It's really, really nice way of doing it. So what we've got with this slightly taller build here is we've taken in, again, pinching in at the edges ever so slightly, so it is not a direct slope up, to give it a bit of character. And then we're going up 2 blocks and coming in, 2 blocks coming in, 2 blocks coming in again. And then we've shoved another 2 blocks going upwards on the top of the roof. And the reason we've done that is otherwise it looks like it pinches off too quickly. We don't want this to look like a bell shape. We want it to look quite pointy. It works really well on churches. It works really well on medieval builds. It works well on the main part of a house where you're really wanting to give a real height on the house. It definitely works better when you've got a downstairs that's got a lot of height. It works really well on a 2nd or a 3rd floor as well. So don't put this sort of roof on a very short building because it will look out of place. But if you've got a taller building that's maybe got a bit of width and a bit of height, this is a really good way to accent that height with a nice, attractive shaped roof. And then finally, we've got what I'd call the block roof. Now, the reason we've got a block roof here is it's got no steps. It's just blocks. But what we can do here is if you take it from a distance, you can start to give it a little bit of texture. So all this has got is blocks going along the edge, and then on top of it we've shoved randomly some half slabs or slabs. They're not really a half slab. A half slab would be half of a slab. So that's a slab that runs across the roof like that, and it just gives a little bit more of a texture. You'd use this in a more rustic build. You'd perhaps use it in an outhouse again. I'm not the biggest fan of this type of edge because it looks just a little bit too angular. But if you've got it on an outbuilding or something like that where you want a nice textured roof, you don't want it too smooth, it works really, really rather well. And the idea behind these roofs is that you can incorporate different roofs into the building. So you don't have to have just, for example, just the 12-12 with a little bit of a bell shape on the side. You can incorporate lots of different roofs in lots of different ways. And also some of these more complicated roofs might work better when you've got a bigger platform. So for example, this big one here, if this was not 9 wide but 11 wide or 13 wide, you can make it even taller. Or this one here, if this was 13 or 15 wide, that pinching can become even more accented. You can use it to make some really spooky looking builds. So really it's just for you to start to play around with them. And also don't forget, use different woods. Don't use the same wood on the roof. Maybe use some dark oak and some spruce, or some birch and some oak. Mix it and match it. Make sure that you use different edging. Don't just use cobble. You could use the stone brick. It's a really nice way to edge a roof. Don't use just wood for a roof. Use bricks, use stone. There's lots of different ways that you can use them. And I'm just going to try doing a little house, or it's maybe not a little house, that's using a couple of 3 different types of these roofs so you can see how they can work together. So I've combined a number of different roof types into this quick build. So we've got, coming at the front, look, we've got just that little standard slab roof bringing out the front door ever so slightly, so as it's slightly proud of the front of the house. And then we've got that quite pointy pinched bell shape at the front, giving it a little bit of height and actually housing really nicely that lantern that's being suspended from the top. It allows us to give quite a long thin window in the front of that gable, which is quite attractive as well. Then coming around the side, we're moving for a classic bell shape there, except in this way it doesn't necessarily have to be on a barn. It could be on the side of the house, and it's working beautifully to go into the side of that roof. The way it marries in together with the joins works perfectly. You can see that, and being able to decorate that with a nice wide window and some shutters around it works pretty well, I think. And then we've obviously got exactly the same at the other end with that pointy bell. And then coming this side, we've got a slightly flatter bell shape than we had on the other side. You could say this is more like the classic barn bell, but even then we can still have a nice 1x3 window with a kind of a hooded over canopy that gives for a little bit of detail, and also allows us to have this dormer window which uses the classic 12-12 roof to come into the side, which also marries beautifully into the sides of the house. And then I've done a quick outbuilding where I've put my horses, and that's using the block system that actually works really quite well with the stable, especially if you give it a little bit of detail on the side using those slabs. So that's how you can marry all of these different roofs together to give yourself some quite interesting effects. So you've got there 9 different roofs that are all fairly similar, but actually with the slightest little tweaks you can give some really nice different effects and merge them together to give yourself some nice building effects that can work really well, especially if you incorporate that into a little bit of detail. So don't forget, don't just use spruce, use all sorts of different woods. It's really important that you mix up your roofs using different materials, because you're going to find the effects you get are absolutely superb. If you have enjoyed this video, please do remember to slap that like button. It'd be great to know you're enjoying them, and perhaps I'll do these building tutorials again for you if you want me to. Also, if you've not done it already, please do hit that subscribe button. It'd be great to see you in my sub club, and I look forward to seeing you in another video. You take it easy now. Bye.